Hello, and welcome to a nice, tasty wrap-up. February, the short one. The runt of the litter is done. I read books. We're going to go through the stats, see how I did. Am I still as happy as I was after January? Who knows? I can say that apparently I read 13 books this month. And I thought that it was an anomaly in terms of how much I read in January. But apparently, I will show that there are poetry collections and short stories in here, and novellas. So this is an inflated ego of a number. I read 13 books, which equates to 4,081 pages apparently, because that is information we desperately need to know. And in terms of top moods, this sums me up. Reflective, emotional, dark, challenging, adventurous. Adventurous sneaks in there. But that is a fucking unholy descriptions. Reflective, emotional, dark and challenging. Oy vey. I promise I'm not as depressed as my reading makes me out to be. But if you do enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe as well. I'm just going to throw that in there. Pace-wise, no one really cares. That you read books, sometimes they're slow, sometimes they're fast, sometimes they're medium. But page count, we didn't do what I was hoping. And by that I mean, we kind of did, but it's unfortunately the case that because I am reading some short stories and poetry collections, that under 300 pages is going to creep up. It's gone over the 50% mark for this month. Do I really care? No, but we're hoping to push up the other numbers. I only read one book above 500 pages as well, which was Clash of Kings, the Song of Ice and Fire read-along. Otherwise, I was very much in the 300 to 500 range, which isn't bad, not by any means, but we need to work on some of the numbers. Fiction to non-fiction, I am still buzzing with myself. Give myself a pat on the fucking back. 23% non-fiction. Damn, that's like four non-fiction books in a month. I know, like, some of the poetry counts, trust me, I'm looking better than I actually am based on how this is going in the circles, the pie charts. But I'm still pleased with myself that the non-fiction is remaining consistently up there actually for what I usually do. Genres, we've got a nice even peel of classics, literary and fantasy, all hitting 4. They are what I typically read. That is my go-to: fantasy, literary, classics. Between uni, myself, and wanting to look like a cool reader, they're the 3 home bases. Followed by LGBTQ+, feminism, poetry and memoir, which encompasses a lot of the literary and classics I read. However, we're feeling gay, we're feeling like a woman, we're rhyming, and we're writing about ourselves. So, if I ever write a book, I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to look like. We listened to some audio. I read no ebooks. I'm currently reading an ebook at the end of the month, but we had no arcs or anything. No reason to read ebooks, so just print or audio. I'm fine with that. And then overall, pretty impressed that I hit an absolute solid 4 stars for the month. Just no dilly-dallying, just 4. And when I actually go through the reviews, we're going to do it in star order this time to change things up. I'm trying out new stuff. So we'll start off with the weakest, get into the best. And so let's do that. We're going to very briefly overview and review each book. But in terms of the actual stats, for those that are just here for stats, I am still pleased with myself. 13 books is absurd. However, as I said, some poetry selections, a short story, a novella, it comes down. But overall, I don't think I can critique myself too much. Lady Chatterley's a Lover by D.H. Lawrence. D.H. stands for Damn Horny Lawrence. I gave it 2 stars. I had to read this for university. If the book was 100 pages shorter, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. However, once you're 100 pages in, you know where it's going, you know what it's doing. It didn't need to be that long, personally. I think that the background and the context of the story and D.H. Lawrence is a lot more interesting than the actual book. I don't really have much more to say, personally. I won't lie, towards the end, I don't ever do this apart from if it's a uni book. I cliff notes like 3 chapters because it was just stuff we'd already read. And I didn't care, and so I did that. 2-star. I apologise to people that do enjoy it. If you want to know about Lawrence, that's super interesting. Him as a person, his relationship, the writing of the books, everything like that is super interesting. The actual book itself, not so much. 3.5 stars goes to a short story called Bernice Bobs Her Hair by F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's also it's a short story that I am doing for that same module at university, which is on modernism. And so we were looking at Bernice Bobs Her Hair. It is a short story that follows Bernice. She goes to visit her cousin, who is she's very much what would be described as a new woman, how she would feel herself, that she is kind of confident, daring, and Bernice, on the other hand, is a wet drip for people. That when she goes to parties, people don't want to step in and dance with her. She's very much ostracized from the rest of the young people, and as a result, it ends up in the relationship where Bernice is trying to learn how to be this exotically confident new woman that her cousin is. I'm going to spoil it because what's the chances you're ever going to actually read this short story? However, I would actually recommend reading it. I thought it was really good for what it was. And basically it ends where the cousin's a real fucker, and she's been she manipulates Bernice into getting her hair bobbed. And as a result, people stop being interested because they just don't think she looks nice, and they think that the idea of bobbing her hair, which was like the idea of, it was related to a woman who was of loose morals, that the idea of actually doing that was more enticing than the actual act and the aftermath. No one wants to be around the aftermath. And so as a result, Bernice fucking goes into her cousin's room at night, chops her fucking hair off, throws it on the guy that she was interested's fucking porch, and fucks off. And it was such a badass ending that it's hard not to. It's a real girl boss gatekeep gaslight type situation. It was pretty based. And then the other 3.5 stars was Ariel by Sylvia Plath. It was a collection of poetry that was put out posthumously, and overall, once again, some of the writing is exceptionally gorgeous in this. Some of it really just hit me exactly where it wanted to, and it really struck a chord. I think the actual writing itself is incredible. However, there are some references in terms of racial and sexual that weren't for me, and I think that as much as that is a historical context, I didn't jive with it. It wasn't for me. So it was a dual balance in terms of those, where I really enjoyed some parts and then other parts soured the experience. 3.75 is Sell in the Sense by Josiah Bancroft. I have a review on the channel. It will be up in the corner somewhere. And I really loved aspects of this book, and other parts I had a real problem with. To get it out the way, because I also finished the book this month, I also read Arm of the Sphinx. Arm of the Sphinx was a far superior book that did a lot to redeem some of the issues that made this book a 3.75 rather than a solid 4 to 5. In the end, Arm of the Sphinx, to spoil it, was a 4.5 out of 5. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Really got me on that train that Sedlin had kind of hopped me partially on, but I wasn't fully there. Arm of the Sphinx has me now. And then the other was Ocean Vuong's first poetry collection, Night Sky with Exit Wounds. The reason that this is a 3.75, I think honestly comes down to that I have read Time is a Mother, his latest poetry collection, and On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and I preferred both of those to this. So if I was going to recommend Ocean Vuong, I would recommend Time is a Mother or On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous before Night Sky with Exit Wounds, which I know is an unpopular opinion, but that is me personally. My 4 out of 5 is that I read Salman Rushdie's Victory City. The new release came out in February. I bought it like a few days after it came out. And in terms of that, I will say that this book is very much thanks to my Patreons So thank you very much for supporting me. And yeah, it comes down to a book, like I own very few latest releases because I just can't afford it. And so the Patreon is something that I can use that money to be able to buy latest books. So I do really appreciate that. And Salman Rushdie's new book, it's not so it comes around every day. I've now read Midnight's Children, so I felt like I was aware of Salman Rushdie's some of his writing style, and so going into this, I really enjoyed it. I started off quite nervous because the book it tells the story of a young girl called Pampa Campana who she witnesses the burning of her mother. And as a result, she's kind of like, this won't happen to me type thing. I won't let this happen again. And as a result, she ends up with the kind of embodiment of God, like of a God, coming through her and saying that she will see the rise and fall of an empire. She will live for 250 years and be this God's poet. And that's the story that we follow. And from the beginning, it's a very telly don't show book, because it's emulating a lot of fables and myths, and that's the typical vibe you get from that, is that it's very telly, don't show. And for I think a lot of people that's going to be a big issue, and that was for me at the beginning. I found myself disconnected from the plot and the characters especially. I felt like I was reading a historical account rather than an actual thing that I was invested in. However, as time goes on throughout the book, the more I adjusted to the writing style, the more I found myself really invested, and I came away with a very, not necessarily, I wouldn't say a really enjoyable experience, but an enriching experience, I would feel like. 4.25 is Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, I apologise. I thoroughly enjoyed this, really enjoyed it. I'd also extremely recommend it. It is a story where animal meat has become poisonous. Humans cannot consume it, and so they have begun eating human meat. And we follow a character who is working in an abattoir, and my number one takeaway is that from a language viewpoint, this book is doing an incredible job. It hits exactly what it's wanted to. When you hear that premise, when you hear it's a dystopia, you know what you're probably going to get from it, and the author hits that exactly where they want to and exactly how they want to. I don't think it's a perfect book, but what it wants to do, it does very well. And then the other is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I actually finished this right at the start of February because I started it at the end of January. Also a fantastic book. This deals with two people who come together that when they're young, one is very ill, the other kind of befriends them. They're from very different classes in the sense of upper and lower, and they meet later in life and they start designing games together. And it's about the relationships that form and break as a result of this central core relationship. And it spans a very long time, and I think that the best thing about this book is not only that the writing is fantastic, but also that the plot is extremely real. The characters make very real decisions that seem almost counterintuitive to what the plot of a book should be, in terms of ramping up and taking you somewhere. That sometimes the book makes a decision that you're like, that seems like it would be an active detriment, but instead in this, it works because it adds to that realism that is the core and basis for what I really enjoyed about it. This was Goodreads' top fiction book of the year, so it's fair to say that a lot of people are reading this. I would recommend it. I think the hype definitely lives up. And whilst I did think that there was a bit of a length issue where I felt like there were parts that could have been a bit trimmed and shorter, overall, it slapped very hard. At 4.5, I've already talked about Arm of the Sphinx, but I also, someone from university also let me borrow Unbound, My Story of Liberation and the Birth of the Me Too Movement by Tarana Burke. That I was at a book club thing at uni, which was around at the start of the year, and this was her choice. This is what she brought in for that she thought we should read. It didn't end up getting chosen. We read a different book that was also very good, but I was very interested in this, so she very kindly let me borrow the book, and so I read it physically and also listened to the audiobook when I was out walking, etc. And this was also fantastic. It is brutal and very, very honest in terms of not shying away from the issues and problems that the own author puts into the world. I think it was an extremely fantastic, reflective piece of writing that you really got the feeling that this was a person who has experienced life and not only experienced it but changed as a result, and how they view things and how they view themselves, which is what you want. You don't want a memoir that feels like no one's had any progression, or that they're very much giving you a polished version. This felt almost brutally honest in a lot of ways. And whilst it's quite short, I do think that there was more that could have been expanded on. Overall, this tells the story of Tarana Burke, who wakes up one day to find that the hashtag #MeToo has gone viral, but that for decades she's been working with the same phrase in the same field of work. And so we go back to that beginning, we go back to how she was when she began, before the movement even began, her journey from childhood and her own abuse into being an adult who's working in the community, and the horrifyingly disturbing revelations that come around in the people that she knows and the revelations of people she's worked with. It was harrowing, it was really well done, so I would really recommend that as well. The audiobook's read by the narrator, by the author as well. It was really well done. And then my 2 5 stars. My 2 5 stars, I won't go into one too much because I've lost it. I put it back on the bookshelf. A video will be coming out where I read a certain booktuber's favourite books, and one of them was one of those books, which was In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. So I'm not going to go into it because I've actually just recorded my views on that, and it's fair to say I gave it 5 stars, so I loved it. Please read this book, it is incredible. That when that video comes out, you'll have the reasons for why I loved it, but I would 100% check, just have a look on Goodreads, read some reviews and everything. And the last one was a 5 star for Clash of Kings by George R. R. Martin. Also a review on the channel if you want to check it out. It's George R. R. Martin, it's A Song of Ice and Fire, I love it. The change of perspective in the sense of the new point of views that we have throughout this book, the scaling in terms of starting very slowly, dealing with the aftermath of the first book, and then building up to a massive climax that is insane, unputdownable. I have nothing but praise to give to Clash of Kings, definite 5 star, and that really capped off a great reading month. I started off very poorly, like I think around 2 weeks or 3 weeks into February, my average was like a 3.75, and then certain above 4s, some 4.25s, the 4.5s, the 5 stars, they really started coming out towards the end, and as I finished this, which really rectified what was a rough start to the reading month. So that's everything. I read some books, we've talked about them, we've gone through my stats, I think I'm doing well. I think I'm on track for a banging year. I have some chocolate to eat, and I'm going to chill out and read some more. If you did enjoy, please do like, please subscribe, and have a nice rest of your day, why don't you? Can you do that for me? Is it too much to ask? Go on. Alright, bye.